Welcome to this week's episode of For the Love of Chiropractic. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Freeman. On this week's show, we're going to be talking about you get to pick the one key ingredient that you're going to focus on to make this year the best year ever. We had talked about making this year the best year ever on last week's episode. There's only 3 possible choices. You get to pick which one is your one. And then, beginning next week, we're going to have our first guest of the year talking about his 3 secrets of success that have made his practice wildly successful also. But right now, it's time to run the intro for today's show. Welcome to another episode of For the Love of Chiropractic. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Freeman. I've been in practice for over 30 years, and I continue to work in a $1 million practice that I built, ran, and sold. I've taught, lectured, and coached our profession, and helped so many chiropractors build the practice and the life of their dreams. And now, I want to help you do the same. So here's today's show. On last week's episode, which was called Start the New Year Right for the Best Year Ever, we had spent some time talking about looking at last year, seeing what worked and what didn't work, and then really setting a plan of how you're going to practice this year to make this year the best year ever. On today's show, we want to focus on some of those specifics to really dial down and improve the parts of your practice to make your life easier and provide the best care possible to every patient every time you see each person. So now what I'm going to ask you to do for this episode is to really roll up your sleeves and stare deeply into the mirror, because you have to ask yourself a question. And the question you have to ask yourself is, deep down, what is your motivation? What is your motivation in your practice? And there are really only 3 metrics. Everybody's motivated by one of them. There's no wrong answer, but depending on which one you start with, depends on how you tune the practice to make it the best year ever to help your patients, your people. So number 1 is the metric that you look at: how many new patients do I get? How many new patients do I attract into the office because I love meeting new people, and I love when people come to see me to help them with their problems that they have not been able to figure out for themselves, or whatever other motivation there may be that you love seeing, meeting, and helping more and more new patients. And if that's your core motivation, I think that's just terrific. The second core motivation for some doctors is the number of regular patient visits that they see. Sometimes that's equated in called PVA, patient visit average, but how many regular patient visits on a larger scale does your practice service on a weekly, monthly, dare I say, annual basis? And if the average chiropractor sees about 100 visits a week and sees patients on average about 50 weeks a year, yes, that means the average chiropractic practice sees about 5,000 visits a year. It's not good or bad. That's just the facts of what we see. If that's your motivation, if that's how you choose to measure your success, so be it. Where do you fall in that? Does your practice see a fraction of that number or see a multiple of that number? Again, you're deciding what you want the practice to be, your practice, your business, and obviously, ultimately, your reputation. And the third way that some doctors measure is how much money they're bringing in. Again, on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, or for the year. They look at the practice solely as a business. Well, I shouldn't say solely as a business, but from the business perspective, and businesses need to make money. There's nothing wrong with that. We are in practice to make a profit at the end of the day because we have families to feed and lives to live. So some doctors look at their practice and measure, okay, how much money am I making? And regardless of which one of those three is your primary motivator, the good news is they all wrap together. And that's what I want to spend some time talking about now. In a previous episode, we had looked at the statistics that really run your practice. And I would so encourage you to go back and listen to that episode again, because we talked about those numbers and how they impact you in the practice. But here, that's not what we're going to be talking about right now. What we're looking at, and we'll take the motivators that I've said in the reverse order that I initially stated them. If you're looking at the money that you make on a weekly, monthly, or annual basis, you can use the statistics to figure out how many regular patient visits, because you know what you charge for a regular patient visit, how many of those regular patient visits you need to generate the amount of money that you're looking for. You can also look at it from the new patient standpoint and say, well, on average, people stick with me a certain number of visits, and that's that patient visit average number again. And therefore, I need X number of new patients on a weekly, monthly, annual basis in order to produce that much money. I can share with you from my years of experience and of all the chiropractors that I've known over the years, the ones who focus on how much money they're making are not the happiest. The happiest and most satisfied chiropractic physicians that I've ever known are the ones who focus on either how many people they get to help, the number of new patients that they see, or the number of regular patient visits that they're seeing, because they know they're being of ongoing help to a certain number of people over the weeks, months, or even years that those patients continue to see them. Those doctors typically have the broadest understanding of the use of chiropractic and how chiropractic is useful for ongoing maintenance and ongoing lifestyle, optimum health for people over the course of their lifetime. The doctors that typically focus on how many new patients am I helping usually have a much more focused approach, much more limited approach to the use of chiropractic and the goals for their patient. It's to get out of pain. It's to eliminate the injuries that were a result of a car accident or some other acute onset, versus the relief, correction, strengthening, and maintenance that I've talked about on other episodes. And it's certainly not my position to tell you which one of those I think you should be doing. It's your life, your practice, your profession. You get to decide what that looks like and what you think. What I can tell you is there is no shortage of resources, whichever one of those three goals you have chosen to be your primary. There is no shortage of resources to help you set the goal, meet the goal, and even beat the goal to get where you want to be this year. So this is truly your best year ever. So as I said, let's really dial in and talk about each one of these now. Regarding seeing more new patients, as you've heard me say on previous episodes, I need more new patients seems to be the battle cry of the chiropractic profession. Many doctors, typically those with smaller practices, say things like, oh, if I just had another handful of new patients, 5 new patients, 10 new patients, 20 new patients, whatever the number is, I'd be just fine. And if that's your focus and that's your battle cry, kudos to you. You know what? Stop crying about it and let's roll up our sleeves and master what needs to be mastered to acquire the new patients, to attract the new patients into the office, to get more people in your community to know you're the doc they need to see for fill in the blank, the things that you love to treat and help people with. Maybe it's headaches, maybe it's neck pain, maybe it's back pain, maybe it's sciatica, maybe it's pregnancy issues, maybe it's pediatric issues. Whatever the issues are, whatever the challenges, the problems are, the health issues that you love to treat in your office, that you like to help people with, do whatever it takes to get in front of as many people as possible to let them know not only what you do, not only who you are, but why you're doing the things that you do. What's your story? I hope that every single person listening to this podcast is familiar with TED Talks. TED.com stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. I used to say TED Talks were YouTube for smart people, but now there's so much great content on YouTube also, I can't say that old cliche anymore. So if you go to TED Talks, TED.com, there was a talk by a man by the name of Simon Sinek. It's one of the most listened to TED Talks of all time. And he talks about letting people know your why you do what you do, is the most effective way, even more than the how or the what. That's important. But your why is the big motivator to move people in your direction. Yes, you can help them. And this is why I want to help you. And to this day, the single best way to attract new patients into your office is to put yourself in front of people one-on-one at some sort of spinal screening, at a meet and greet, at a health fair, where you get to tell people who you are, why you do what you do, after you have asked them about their health and if they're having any issues with the things that you love to treat. So you're having issues with things like neck pains and headaches or lower back pain. Well, yeah, I am having that. I love helping people with things like that because, and then tell your personal story. Why are you so motivated to do that? Maybe you had the same things. Maybe your mother or your father had the same things and a chiropractor helped them, and that's why you decided to dedicate your life to being a chiropractic physician. And then invite that person to come into your office to do a thorough history, to do a proper examination, and then lay out a treatment plan. That is by far the easiest way that I have found to build a practice bringing new patients into the office. There's an entire episode from last year that was called 3 Ways to Double Your Practice, and we talk about all of those things in that episode. I would strongly encourage everybody listening, go back and listen to that episode again. It's episode number 13 if you scroll back, and I got so much phenomenal feedback on the people who listened to that. Absolutely loved it, made a huge difference on their practice. So I encourage you to listen to it again and really enjoy it. Now, on the other hand, perhaps seeing more and more new patients is not what really turns your buttons, meeting new people and helping new people with challenges that they bring to you in your office. So if you're a doctor that's motivated by the regular patient visits, how many regular patient visits do I get to see? And the more people I can get my hands on, the better it is, the happier I am, and the long-term difference that I'm making for each person and their entire family for generations. Then what you've decided to do is get off of what I call the new patient treadmill. And while there's no wrong answer, whether it's the new patients or regular patient visit thing, I believe from a productivity and even profitability standpoint, as well as making a long-term difference in people's lives, seeing more regular patient visits makes so much more sense. And let me take you through why this is the case. Every person who comes into your office as a new patient, every person who comes in needs to fill out the paperwork. Absolutely. Every single person who comes into your office and fills out the paperwork needs to have a proper, thorough history taken and documented. And every single person who comes into the office and filled out the paperwork, had a proper, thorough history taken, also needs a good, thorough examination done with whatever other ancillary testing you deem necessary and appropriate, whether it's some sort of computerized nerve testing, whether it's x-rays or some other imaging or testing. All those things need to be done for you then to come up with a treatment plan, as well as the diagnosis, because we are doctors and physicians. And then you need to spend time with the patient, going through and giving them a phenomenal report of findings, because this is their health. They have every right to know everything they want about their body, their health, what's wrong, how it happened, how you can help them, how you're going to help them, and what they can expect in the future. And that, my friends, is called the report of findings with crystal clear communication. And I absolutely believe that every single person who comes into your office and goes through all of those steps, they found their way to your office. They filled out the paperwork. They sat and told you their story, what happened, what they're suffering with, what they're hoping to get rid of, how they want to be living their lives. They submitted to an examination. They allowed you to poke and prod and twist and rotate and bend their legs and all sorts of things for you to figure out what's going on. Perhaps you exposed them to ionizing radiation, as we said. I believe every one of those people, if you explain properly what you found and how you can help, will accept care. As you've heard me say previously, acceptance rates at reported findings should be 100%. Even if you find something that you don't treat in your office and they need to see some other provider, maybe they need to see a different chiropractor who does something differently. If they don't take your advice, it means you didn't explain it to them properly, because these people have a problem. And it's up to you to help them get where they want to be and how they ought to be. And if you don't feel your report of findings is up to snuff, episode number 8 about the crystal clear communication will be a phenomenal tool for you. It's one of the most listened to episodes of the entire 60 plus episodes that are out there currently. I strongly recommend going back and listening to that one also. Or if you're only going to listen to one, that's a great one to listen to. But as we're talking about increasing your regular patient visits, how long patients stick around, that gets into patient education. Patients love to stick around with people they genuinely like. So whether we like it or not, a big part of it is how likable are you? Are you wearing cologne or perfume that's just too strong? They can't stand it. Is your breath bad? They don't even want to be in the room talking to you because your breath smells bad. Do you dress a way that is attractive to your patients? Do you speak to them at their language, the way that they like to be spoken to or talked with? Are you using the kind of grammar they use? Are you meeting them where they are? Having a conversation with your people, trading at eye level, not talking down to people and not talking up to them. People are people. They want to be spoken to and treated fairly and appropriately. And as you're doing that, are you also speaking to them about why their chiropractic care is so important? Not on every visit beating them over the head with it, but planting the seeds of how much better they're getting, leading them forward, telling them where they're going, what we're going to be doing a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now, 6 months from now, As this is being recorded, we're in the middle of winter here on the east coast of the United States. There's snow on the ground. And if you have patients who are golfers or summer outdoor enthusiasts, you know what? They're already itching to get back out on the bicycle, on the golf course, the summer hiking trails, camping trips. You know what? Are you doing the things with them in your office now to prepare them to be able to doing the things they want to be doing 6 months from now? That's patient education. That's loving them and leading them forward to get them where they want to be. Not where you want them to be, where they want to be going in their life, the things they want to be able to accomplish at the highest level possible. And in fact, there's even the first ever 2-part episode that we did, episodes 14 and 15, about the optimized regular patient visit and the regular patient visit, the prequel, that talks about the do's and don'ts of a phenomenal regular patient care visit to help people the best way you possibly can. And having spent time talking about the new patient model and the regular patient visit model, let's finish out by talking about how much money can I make model. You know what? We make this money because we provide phenomenal care to our patients, and I'm a strong believer in the charge a fair fee and provide excellent service, with a caveat of, would you pay that much to see you as you set your fees? Is that what your care is worth? And having said all of that, if you've set a number in your mind of that's how much money I want to make, then you simply put together a really good recipe of the number of visits a person needs for what you're typically treating them for, any other ancillary services, things you could sell them, cervical pillows, some sort of specialized traction, some sort of specialized physical therapy modalities, laser treatments, or whatever it may be, that's going to raise the office visit average, the amount of money that people are paying on an average basis. And therefore, you can quickly figure out, on average, a patient will spend this much money in my office getting to the health goal that we've agreed we're working towards. Doing the math backwards, you know exactly how many new patients you need to put into the machine to create that outcome. And as I've said many times, we don't do this for the money. We do this because we're helping humanity to be healthier. Whichever metric you choose, it's time to really dial in, get ready, get set, and go make this year the best one ever, because by the time you're listening to this, it's already the middle of January. All right, and that's our show for today. If you have a question about today's show or your own practice, feel free to reach out at fortheloveofchiropractic.com. Before making changes to your practice, be sure to seek legal advice regarding those changes and regulations in your state. For the Love of Chiropractic is an RGF production, all rights reserved. And thanks for listening. Original music provided by Hunter Rich Music.